For today's episode of Back to the City, I'm extremely excited to be joined by Darren Jackson, aka Kid DAKOTA. Let's begin every episode as we do at the MINNEHAHA recording company. Here's Kid DAKOTA performing the second track from the new record. This is The Convalescent.
Now I know exactly how it feels to be left for dead. No hope, no future, convalescence in a bed where I lie alone and dream of flying. Wake up in a sweat you can't deny. That I will never be the way I was. That I will never do the things I did. And you don't love me, darling. Candles are burning in windows. Oh, darling, patiently waiting for ravens. Oh, the convalescent, darling, I will be blood for your leeches. Oh. Now I know exactly how it feels to barely be alive. I can't move, I can't eat or sleep. All that's left for me to do is die like Gregor. Sam supposed metamorphosis, body full of apple cores. It's true that I will never be the way I was. That I will never do the things I did. And you don't love me, darling. Candles are burning in windows. Oh, darling, patiently waiting for ravens. Oh, the convalescent, darling, I will be blood for your leeches. Whoa.
So here we are back in the duplex, and we're now going to go on a journey through the new record. This is the beginning of the opening track, the title track, Denervation. The opening lyrics are, "When you cut the nerve, I don't feel a thing. They say that I will walk, and I know you'll try to sing."
That song is about my accident.
Yeah.
I was involved in this bicycle accident in the summer of 2014 where I flew over the handlebars of my bicycle going at high speed and ended up breaking my pelvis. And I had a surgery, and I had a 6-inch bolt put in my pelvis and 6 2-inch screws. So I'm kind of bionic now, which
Yeah.
is it's nice, to be bionic. I don't think that side of my pelvis will break again. At the time, I was dating this musician, and while I was convalescing at my parents' house in the Black Hills of South Dakota, she broke up with me. I kept being reassured that I would walk again, right? Because when I broke my pelvis, I also had some serious nerve injury.
Which is what Denervation is.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
When the nerves no longer supply current to muscles, and then the muscles so slowly die, right?
It's only denervation.
You've highlighted that the record is about loss and many types of loss. This opening track, for example, is dealing with the loss of limbs. as you've been highlighting. What are the other types of loss that are explored in the record?
Yeah, so the loss of limbs, the loss of just your ability to perambulate, specifically.
Yes.
In my case, but I think it's easily transferable to other sort of bodily losses. Yeah, most significantly, I guess it's loss of a loved one. It was really interesting throughout the saga that was this accident that I experienced. People reacted in different ways. Some people were very supportive. Some people, and I really am thankful that there were those people there. And other people, they weren't as supportive. And I was a little shocked, but it really made it clear to me who my friends were.
In the song Hope, which you'll be performing, it will be the second song that you perform in the episode, there's an exploration of the loss of expectation and optimism.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that, so thanks for reminding me. Yeah.
You're welcome. The final song actually that you'll close the episode with, Pills, deals with the loss of the ability to deal with reality.
Right.
Without medication. Sort
of a natural consequence of other losses, right? Imagination.
At what stage did you write the song Denervation?
I wrote that about 3 months after I had my accident. I wrote it actually when I was just able to start moving around with a walker.
Yeah.
When I finally acquired some will to live, because prior to that I had very little.
Now I know exactly how it feels to be left for dead. No hope, no future, convalescent in a bed where I lie.
It's hard to describe how utterly consuming and defeating the whole experience was of just being in a bed and not being able to do anything.
You were visiting your parents.
I was visiting my parents, yeah.
Yeah, so it was
I was on vacation, summer vacation from graduate school. I was just going to be there for a few weeks, and I was, mountain biking and crashed, and then it was impossible for me to return to school because I couldn't even walk.
Yeah.
So I just ended up staying with my parents. I was still enrolled in school, and I was at Virginia Tech, and they allowed me to take courses via Skype, so I was able to maintain my enrollment, which was, it was really difficult because the pain that I was experiencing was, it was just, I had never experienced anything like it before. I was on, massive amounts of opiates, and it was like I wasn't even on anything.
Yeah.
It was nerve pain. It's such a unique kind of pain. And the thing about it that was so disheartening is that it wasn't clear to anyone whether or not it would ever subside, right? The doctor said, you might have to deal with this pain the rest of your life. And I was like, what? This is not a life that I would even want to live, When I started writing Denervation, actually the pain had, 3 or 4 months in, the pain started to subside a little bit. The nerves started to come back. It was exhilarating. I don't know if, the feeling of being really excited about living comes through in that song. But when I wrote it, I was so excited and relieved.
I think it does come through a lot in the performance and in the songwriting. Taking that particular experience and transforming it into these songs, this collection of songs. How did that compare to, say, being at your parents' place and writing So Pretty?
Well, I guess when I wrote So Pretty, that was after a tragedy as well.
Yes.
I just dealt with like a severe sort of resurgence of my drug addiction, and I had been involved in an accident. The level of despair that I was experiencing when I was writing Denervation, or the level of despair that had just subsided, that I had just realized my life might not be so horrible after all.
Yes.
It was so much more intense with my bike accident than
Yes.
with So Pretty.
Yes.
I've gone through some rough periods in my life, as everyone has, but this was the worst by far, So
Yep.
when things did started to take a turn for the better, it was really exciting.
It must have been very exciting to go to Pachyderm.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about everything leading up to arriving at Pachyderm?
When I started feeling better and I started writing a little bit better and I started writing some songs, it was just natural for me to record them. And so I, quickly sort of made sketches of all the songs and I sent them to my old dear friend John Cooker, who recently had bought and totally renovated Pachyderm. And he was like, wow, these are awesome, you should come to Minneapolis and record them. I mean, this was an amazing opportunity for me. I've worked with John on, a lot of other projects, and he was always very generous with his time and with his, studio and gear. And so this wasn't an uncommon gesture for John to make. It was just very timely because I had just written all these songs. They were very fresh, and, I was excited to lay them down as soon as possible because the two records that I had made before that were collections of songs from very different periods of my life. This record is different in that the songs were all sort of written in a relatively short period of time, and then were recorded, or initially recorded, very rapidly.
John recommended working with Matthew Kazama
Right.
of Birthday Suits, of
Right.
course. Can you describe the experience of flying into Minneapolis and
Sure, yeah.
beginning to work on the songs with
Yeah.
Matthew?
Yeah, so John suggested that I work with Matthew, and I didn't know Matthew, and I checked out his other work with Birthday Suits.
Yeah.
And I was blown away. I was like, yeah, this guy's awesome. He's energetic and really, he plays in a duo. The Birthday Suits are a duo, so I knew that he was accustomed to the kind of intensity you have to bring to a duo, right?
Yeah.
It's not like playing in a band, right? It's very different because you're half of the show. I was excited about the fact that he was such an energetic drummer, that he had this history of playing in a stripped-down duo lineup, and that it was a heavy,
Yeah.
Birthday Suits are a heavy band too,
Absolutely.
not unlike
Yeah.
DAKOTA. So I made his acquaintance via Facebook, and I sent him all the songs, and I waited with bated breath to hear back from him, and he loved the material.
Yep.
And so it clicked, immediately. We rented a practice space at City Sound, I think, and I flew to Minneapolis over Christmas, and we rehearsed 2 weeks, pretty much all day, every day.
Yeah.
and then we went into the studio.
Did any of the songs transform through working with Matthew?
Yeah, we definitely came up with the arrangements in the practice space. It wasn't the case that we came up with new parts or something. All the parts were already there, but we might have moved a couple around in terms of how they eventually are presented on the album as opposed to how they were presented on the demos.
There's so many intricacies in this record as there are in all of your records. So just one, when you deliver the lyric, but I know that I can crawl with your, then there's this pause, dead weight on my back.
Right.
At what stage did that decision come about?
Oh, yeah, that particular edit, that came about pretty late in the game. That happened when I was mixing the album.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wow, I wonder what would happen if I just moved this back a beat and left this space here.
Yeah.
Because it's a nice pregnant kind of pause.
It really is.
Right there.
Yeah. What's the significance of having a pregnant pause at that moment in the song with that lyric?
Well, I think it accentuates the weight that's being carried.
Yeah.
It feels like this empty, dead kind of space.
Yeah.
It's like that moment. There's a nice chemistry between the lyrics and the music right there.
There really is. And the lyric is, I know that I can crawl, which is interesting given how the focus on knowledge, the knowledge of the doctor, but also the doubt of the doctor as to whether you will regain the use of your limbs.
Right.
So it's interesting, this proclamation of knowledge that you can crawl, and then that's alongside the image of foraging.
there's a reference to Hugh Glass,
Yes.
his first chorus.
Yep.
And Hugh Glass was an explorer, right? And he was mauled by bears and left for dead. I guess everybody knows this now because of the Reverend, you know, the movie. That,
Yes.
Who's that
Leonardo
actor?
DiCaprio.
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio was in. Because that movie is based on Hugh Glass' life, right?
Yes.
And I grew up in Bison, South Dakota, and he actually crawled through what would eventually be Bison, South Dakota. So in the parking lot of my school, there's a monument for Hugh Glass. So Hugh Glass loomed large in my upbringing.
He's a precursor in the record. Gregor Samson,
Right.
as well.
Right.
There's a couple of references to Kafka texts.
Yes.
There's the trial, and then there's Metamorphosis. Is this more Kafka-esque than other records of yours?
Yeah, I don't think I've mentioned Kafka before in any other albums. But so to answer your question about the crawling lyric, is that Hugh Glass was left for dead, right? And I sort of felt like by certain people in my life that I had been left for dead, right? But I knew that I knew that at the very least I knew I could crawl, you know. I might not be able to walk again, right?
Yeah.
But I can crawl, and I still am trying to hold you up, these other people up, right? So I know that I can crawl with your dead weight on my back, right? So that you know, harkens back to that first line where it's like, I know you'll try to sing, right? It's the attempt to sing, and still me trying to hold this person up, you know, even though I'm just crawling.
Yes, wow.
So.
Yeah. The opening lyric to The Convalescent is, now I know exactly how it feels to be left for dead, and that's not the only time that lyric will be featured in.
Right. It comes back
in the record.
In the bloodletting.
It does. Yeah. Dreaming becomes a really significant recurring motif.
Right.
And in particular, the dream of flying.
Right.
So can we talk about the production on the delivery and the production of that vocal?
Right. Yeah. In The Convalescent.
In The Convalescent. Yeah.
Right. So the song begins with a heartbeat, a keyboard with all the top end rolled off, so it's very muffled sounding, and the vocals are also sort of muffled sounding, and you know, with the top end rolled off, and that's meant to be, you know, indicative. To me, it feels like a song that's suffocating, right? It's like it's a song that can barely breathe, right? Yeah. Which is what it felt like to be in a bed for 3 months and not being able to move or even sleep or barely eat. You know, I mean, the basic things that, you know, we just take for granted all the time. I couldn't even really do. You know, I couldn't sleep, even though I had to lay there all day every day. But the pain was just too much to even sleep, and eating was just something, you know, I didn't do anymore.
So that's
barely ate, you know. So
and that's in the lyrics, but that's also in the production.
Right. Yeah. So then I would have these dreams. All of the dreams would be of flying. That was the only dream I would ever have, you know. And the dreams would start out with. I'm sure you probably had a dream like this, where you like. Maybe you haven't, but I would have these dreams all the time where I would be walking and I would start to feel really tall. And I would actually feel like that I was starting to fly, right? And I felt that I had suddenly discovered the secret to just like, flying's not so hard. You just gotta walk with these really big steps, you know, and then you just start flying. It's odd, I felt a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, you know, because the accident was my fault, you know. I was riding recklessly, and I felt that I had done some irreparable, which I did, damage to my body, right? And I felt really guilty about that. And this dream sort of absolved me from that guilt.
As we arrive at the end of this song, we're going to return to the MINNEHAHA recording company, where you'll be performing Hope, which is track 5 on the record, and then we'll be talking about the remaining tracks after that. So this is Kid Dakota at the MINNEHAHA recording company performing Hope.
is a dangerous thing. When there is nothing to hope for, a bird with one broken wing, and the sky slamming shut like an oak door. But when I call you, you listen. And you try to tuck me down, but these heights are my prison. And now I know how it feels when you are not around. Like the countryside after the war, advertisements from boarded up stores, like a stray dog that's outside your door, like a sail full of wind of a ship that's been moored. Hope is a dangerous thing. When there is nothing to hope for, a cure for this empty feeling, a machine to fuse all these parts in one whole. But when I call you, you listen. And you hear what I say. But I no longer have permission. See, the permit expired and now there's no.
That was Hope by Kid Dakota, and now of course we're back in the duplex again with Darren. We were talking before about the drive to get better and the knowledge that one will crawl, and the relationship between those two things. I will at least crawl, I know that I will crawl. But then right at the heart of the record there are a couple of songs that explore the condition of hopelessness. So there's self-destruction, and then there's hope, which you just performed, and which follows self-destruction.
Self-destruction ends side A, and
Yep.
hope begins side B. In a certain sense, self-destruction is kind of the culmination of the relationship aspect of the album, I guess. Yep. This is a record about embodiment, right?
Yeah.
And about changes to the body that have profound effects on your psychology, right, or your sense of self, right? So I mean, in that sense, it's like this record is, it's really a challenge to dualism, But it also acknowledges that, I mean, the problem of identity is really difficult, and it's something that philosophers continue to wrestle with, right? Obviously, I was changed as a result of this experience, right? But I still am the same person, right? There's this tension that I'm trying to explore, for better or for worse, you know,
Yeah.
that alludes to the fact that, yeah, I was significantly different, but I'm also significantly the same. Right?
Yes. There's an interesting contrast between like the protagonist, who has this drive to at least crawl, and then this other main character inside A, who one doesn't need to make a plan to destroy because they're doing a good job themselves.
Right.
So it's just interesting, these two entities,
Right.
where one, for whatever reason, is propelled to heal, and to think ahead to side B, to keep coming back. And there's interesting stuff going on in terms of cognition and emotion.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Claims about knowledge, the authority of the medical knowledge.
Right.
At the beginning, self-knowledge as well.
Right.
Inside B, it sounds like something I ought to believe in, but I can't because I don't. So that's a kind of spoiler alert, that's a preview of side B. But the issues of cognition and the problem of belief.
There's two things I would like to say about that. There's science, right? We all love science, and we generally depend on science more than we'll ever know, right? Just to navigate the world in the manner in which we are accustomed to, right? And then there's a point at which science breaks down, right? And it can't answer questions, right? And so even though these are probably the most important times that you want science to be able to answer questions, like
In terms of crisis?
in like a medical situation where it's like your well-being is at stake, right?
Yeah.
And you want some concrete answer, and science says nope, there is no concrete answer here. I'm just using science as a really
The
vague.
attempt to
But science
explain.
is like a body of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
It's a process. It's a body of knowledge. But it sometimes is very incapable of satisfying our desire for knowledge. So that's one thing, right? And the other thing that I investigate in several different songs here is the claims to knowledge within AA and these programs, these 12-step programs, right? It's referenced in Pills and in Keep Coming Back.
Yeah.
I mean, AA and the program have, been a big part of my life, and I think the program is really wonderful for lots of reasons, right? But I also think that it's problematic in certain respects, and I don't think, contrary to much of the AA literature, right, and the people that frequent meetings, that it's not the only way for people to, overcome their addiction and their struggles, right? That lyric of that in the chorus of Keep Coming Back, it sounds like something I want to believe, but I can't because I don't, right? I mean, it sounds great, the things that they say in AA, and I wish I really could believe it. It would make things more simple, I think. Lots of people believe it, and it simplifies their life and makes it easy for them to navigate the world with the challenges that have been bestowed upon them, chemical dependency or whatever kind of addiction they're dealing with. But for a lot of people, it doesn't resonate and it doesn't make sense. And that claim to sort of knowledge, right? It's vacuous.
I think we're in the same area at the beginning of the Nurse. Run the test, make a chart.
Right.
So, what is the record saying about this desire, useful desire to quantify things, to make things?
Yeah, I mean, it has limits, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's probably saying most adamantly is that there are limits. There's hope and there's faith, but then there's also this wall that we always run up against where it's like, we don't know, and then we're just left with hope and faith, right?
Yeah.
Or the lack thereof.
And well, speaking of hope and the presence thereof, of course, the refrain in that song is hope is a dangerous thing when one has nothing to hope for. Could you elaborate on the manner in which hope can be dangerous?
Right. Well, let me say, first of all, that song was actually written, most of that song was written before my accident. So that's an outlier on this album. But to me, it feels of the same sort of spirit that animates the other songs.
It kind of animates the second part. And it gives life to, it's like the beginning of the second part.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did it end up being so?
It seemed like a really good song a strong song there's a feeling of finality with self-destruction, right? There's this bouncing on the ground, things are done.
Yeah.
It's over with. So then Hope starts out very minimal, it's just vocal and guitar, and just a guitar playing one string, so it's really stripped down. So that just seemed like a good, not only just the message of that song, being wary of hope when there may or may not be something to hope for, right? That just seemed like a good transitional piece in which to begin that second side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also aesthetically, just because it's so minimal, and then it allows the side to blossom, in whatever way that it does.
It's very controlled and meticulous, as is obviously much of your songcraft.
Right.
All of your songcraft.
Yeah. That's it all.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah. So let's think about the meticulousness, which is nicely exemplified here, in relation to this scientific drive for control. The act of taking these difficult experiences and transforming them into these meticulously crafted songs that have structure and that provide meaning, even if it's about self-destruction or if it's about the danger of hope. That's an interesting paradox.
Yeah. I mean, I guess all of my songs sort of go through that sort of stylistic filter that my songs exemplify, right?
Yeah.
They're all very controlled, and so even songs that are about being out of control or sort of being in the dark are still presented in a manner that's very calculated. I like to write really simple songs that are very unique, memorable, simple songs, right? Where there aren't really any wasted sort of elements. Everything is sort of essential, I like to think,
Yeah.
All my songwriting is sort of an exercise. Like, I mainly write about situations in which, life is sort of spun off the rails, and we're picking up the pieces, but still, I do write about them in a very, it's very meticulous, like you said. I don't know. Maybe that's my way of bringing some sort of order to the chaos of life, I guess. I don't know.
Right at the beginning of Hope, the opening lyric is, "Hope is a dangerous thing when there is nothing to hope for. A bird with one broken wing and the sky slamming shut like an oak door."
Yeah.
So we have a bird again, and we were talking before about the dream of bird flight. What is the significance of the re-emergence of the bird right at the beginning of side B here?
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that correlation. So that's a pleasant one to.
Well, now the bird has a broken wing, so
yes,
of course,
right.
like your broken leg.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It just seemed like a paradigmatic experience of hope that's not going to be rewarded, right? Hope that's going to be refuted or
so the
not
bird
actualized, because a bird with a broken wing is not going to fly, even though it hopes that it will.
This song is almost like a philosophical, a standalone kind of philosophical experiment. What was the context of writing this song?
Well, it was in the context of a relationship that I knew that it wasn't going to work out.
Yeah.
and everything told me that all the signs pointed to it not working out, right? But nevertheless, I still was hopeful that it might. And I just realized, you know, while I was in the midst of that situation, that it is really dangerous to be hopeful, right? Because the more hopeful you are, the more potential there is to be disappointed, obviously.
What is like the countryside after the war?
I mean, I think that's like the countryside after the war, advertisements from boarded up stores.
Like a stray dog that's outside your door.
Like a sail full of wind of a ship that's been moored, right?
Yeah.
So I think all those are sort of examples of situations where something is hopeful, and it's unlikely that its hope will be rewarded, right?
Yeah.
So the countryside after the war is, you know, it's decimated, right?
Yeah.
And the dog outside of the door is barking, but probably won't get to come in.
Yeah.
And advertisements from stores that are no longer open, right? These are very, you know, hopeful things, like come in and buy these things, and you know, it's like. And then the sail one, which I'm particularly proud of, that line, like a sail full of wind of a ship that's been moored, right? So you have this sail that's just
I have the capacity.
full of wind, right?
This is my role.
Yes, and it's like, but it's not going to achieve anything. It's just because the ship is moored, so it's just going to sit there.
Yeah. This song seems to have a different message than the record, would you say?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that it's sort of a cautious song, right?
Yeah.
It's a song that says practice caution.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that was very. I mean, I was continually when I was convalescing. I was constantly thinking about the future, right? I was constantly thinking, you know, like I was questioning whether or not I would get better, or whether or not, and I was so hopeful. I was just like, I would, you know, I was at the point where I was like making deals with myself, you know, like if I can get better, you know, I'll be the best person I can ever be, you know, or like I was so willing to, like, if someone had the power to make the situation, to change the situation, you know, I would have bartered with them. I would have given up much, you know,
Yes.
to make myself feel whole again.
Yes.
So I was, you know, I was really just, you know, so consumed by hope.
Yeah. Having already written this song.
Already written that song.
This cautionary song.
Right. The thing I hadn't written is the bridge part that we were just talking about, those specific lines.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
But there's already the bird with the broken wing.
Right.
In the introduction.
Right. Yeah.
So
Which is not, like you pointed out, it's not unlike myself.
the song that you're going to close today's episode with is, of course, the final track on the record, and it's called Pills. For me, there's an interesting affinity between the moment where the wind lifts in this song, and then the initial bird dream at the beginning of the record.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk about the moment where the wind whips?
That's like a moment where I'm sort of seized with, like, fear, you know?
Yeah, and there's a lyric about fear.
Yeah, and I feel the fear.
Yeah,
Right.
so I tighten my grip.
Right.
So if hope is a dangerous thing in certain contexts, how are we exploring fear, and how does that relate to the prior exploration of hope?
Right. I mean that song, you know, it's about hope as well, because I really don't want this experience. I really don't want to lose grip of what I have a hold of in this chorus. Even though I know that it's just a dream, right? And so it's sort of the whole chorus is kind of wishful thinking.
So it's hopeful dangerously hopeful.
Right.
And then the fear, what's the relationship between fear and hope?
I mean, I think hope is always like infused with fear, right? Because there's the fear that the hope won't be actualized.
Absolutely. Otherwise, one would just have.
Right. Yeah. If hope wasn't infused with fear, it would just be. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting question. That would be worth writing a paper about. I think.
Yes.
Hope and fear, the relationship.
Yeah, because there's a yearning, and if there's a yearning for something that one doesn't possess, or the continuity of which is in question,
right.
Then of course there will also inevitably be fear,
right.
about the ongoing existence,
right.
of said thing.
Yeah, because hope is a future-oriented feeling, right?
Yes, yeah. At what stage did Pills announce itself to you as the way in which to close this record?
I mean, I've known for a long time that Pills was the closer. There's a sort of like resignation in that song. I feel like the protagonist of that song is, you know, they've suffered a loss, right? And they acknowledge the potential of the 12-step program to help them, right? The line about, and I read the book, the one about me, is the blue book of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Right. So I mean, I think that book really describes me well, and I get some relief from the darkness I feed, right? So in that song, I mean, I think it, you know, it brings together a lot of the disparate elements of the record. You know, this tragedy, trauma, this recognition of there is a way forward, and then also the realization that, you know, you're probably going to need science, and you're going to need antidepressants and some sleeping pills. I took trazodone for a long time after the accident, and I was on antidepressants too. So, I mean, those are the pills that I take to keep me right, and the pills that help me sleep through the night.
Yeah, the other
And then
pills.
the ending and the outro, you know, I just wanted to make it sort of like lullaby-esque, you know, but also kind of sort of dreamy, you know, it almost ends like in a dream-like state.
If one thing that resurfaces at the end here is the idea of dreaming, another motif that struck me as very significant is grasping, because back in The Nurse, the hand, of course, is being used to fearfully summon the nurse.
Right. Right.
They just struck me as interesting, the reoccurrence of this kind of grasping hand.
Yeah.
At the end.
Right.
Does that image strike you as? Well, what does that image bring to mind? That seems, because it shows up at two moments in the record.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it points in that direction towards like embodiment, you know, and just feeling, you know, the album is about coming to grips with, you know, something happening to your body, you know, a tragedy that's overcome your limbs, you know, and you still have to use these limbs to navigate the world, right? So, yeah. Coming to grips. Is that yeah, literally. Yeah. Coming to grips with coming to grips.
Yeah, coming to grips. And what a nice, neat note to draw to a close. Of course, you do. Thank you very much, Darren, for joining me today.
Thank you.
On Friday, you're going to be at the Red Herring Lounge in Duluth.
Right.
Who's going to be with you?
The Black Eyed Snakes.
Which is, of course, Alan Sporhawk.
Yeah, his other band. Yeah, great. I don't know what you would. Pagan blues. So, I mean, maybe all blues is pagan, but emphasis on pagan.
All the more so.
I don't know.
Yeah, well,
yeah, great band.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's on Friday at the Red Herring Lounge. To close today's episode, we're going to go back to the Minnehaha Recording Company. This is Kid Dakota performing Pills.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.